Hey everyone, today I thought we'd look over some of DBD's mysteries and attempt to solve them, or at least discuss them and get some better understanding. Let's get into it. How are we on a different planet inside of the realm, and why has the entity only now just expanded to other planets? This was the first question I wanted to ask myself because it's been something I've been wondering ever since I saw the end transmission trailer. So far, everything in the realm has all been locations from Earth. The closest thing we've had to leaving this has probably been the maps like Temple of Purgation, which is built from both the memories of Adiris, but also placed into the Red Forest by the entity. Same goes for Sanctum, it's actually been customized by the entity, and there's parts from different points in Kazan's life, and such to build it. The realms are built this way for the purpose of drawing out emotion. Eerie is probably the most supernatural looking map, and is odd with how the ink drips around the map. This too is a realm which is said to celebrate what happened to Kamina there. The existence of an entirely different planet though is very interesting, particularly because it appears like this is going to be the furthest into the future we've had for a character. The simple answer to this is that this planet isn't actually the planet, it's just a bit like the other realms, a visualization of the planet, as it's the best location to be used for the entity to gain the most emotion from the new characters of Gabriel and the Singularity. The entity is a being unrestricted by time, space, and anything, basically, it seems. The fact it reached into the future from our perspective and pulled this new place into the realm is not surprising, but it is interesting. The choice to do this is likely also a means to scare the current survivors, pulling them into a realm completely alien to them essentially. It'd be quite a terrifying experience. It's possible that the entity has also done it as the current realms don't give it enough freedom to design the trials. Extending out to other worlds is a good means to expand this. To conclude, nothing in the realm is technically Earth anyway, just a visualization of a place on Earth. Therefore, another planet is still the same deal. It's not actually that planet. It's possible the reason why we haven't seen a non-Earth realm up to this point though, is that because with all of the survivors being human, it wouldn't make sense to go elsewhere essentially. Not until it found Gabriel and the Singularity at least. The entity has been shown to have some power over life, reviving Victor, reviving survivors after each trial. Do you think the entity is capable of creating life from scratch? How complex would a being it created be able to be? I honestly have a very simple answer for this, which is just yes, I think it can absolutely create life from scratch. Victor is a great example of this, previously being dead, but being resurrected when entering the realm. Each time he dies, he also dissolves and comes right back. There are further examples on a smaller scale like the rats and crows within the trials. They wouldn't be able to exist unless the entity created them. So yeah, I think it can create life almost definitely. This applies to the characters that quite likely died as they entered the realm, or were meant to had it not been for entity intervention. It appears to heal Amanda's wound, save Jane from her crash, and Carmina from her dire state. We see survivors almost magically heal each other in seconds, repairing all wounds despite the severity, so there's definitely some kind of healing magic it has, and it's quite likely that the way it heals is by giving the thing that needs healing some of its cells essentially. Auric cells are said to be possibly the building blocks of the realm, and they seem to be able to form anything they like basically. It's possible therefore that when the survivors are being healed, they're actually being pumped full of auric cells or entity matter, which isn't the nicest. Let's not forget too about the existence of bots, who are fully functioning human survivors who are able to run around and do actions and stuff. This seems to be the most complex creation of the entity, closely after Victor maybe. How complex a being the entity could create is a great question, and I think ultimately we don't know the answer just yet. The entity has access to infinite realities, yet chose remake Freddy. Ignoring licensing issues or whatever, why do you think the entity chose him? Whilst this may seem like an out of lore or universe question, I do think it's a very interesting one, and one deserving of an answer within the world of DBD. My initial thoughts kind of boil down to the fact that 2010 Freddy is a lot more messed up, and generally just might act as a better cause of fear. The original Freddy seemed to have lots of wacky, more jokey moments, where new Freddy is just this horrible demon who has nothing like that going on. It's just evil and darkness and Yeah, I think it's highly possible the entity just decided that was the better choice for the realm. New Freddy also seems much angrier and more vengeful, which in itself is a good thing for the entity to feed on. So I think that's a factor too, is how much it could get out of Freddy as much as how much Freddy could scare the survivors. It's a large possibility I think that it picked the newer Freddy simply because he's easier to hold and control. It managed to completely alter his powers after all, and even in-game with his rework, it managed to change them all over again. So the entity definitely has a good hold over him, which would have been debatably achievable with the old Freddy. What happens if a survivor needs to go to the bathroom during the trial? Whilst this question is maybe being very specific about one aspect of the survivors' lives, I do think it's interesting to question how the survivors literally survive, and if their bodily functions work in the same way. So not just using the bathroom, but things like if they need to eat, or if they get tired, stuff like that. I think a simple answer is that they no longer need to do these things in the realm. After all, they're on a constant line, it seems, going in and out of trials, where they take lots of very bad wounds and come back to the campfire completely okay. So I think the fact that's happening is probably proof that they don't need to eat or use the toilet. That seems pretty likely, I think. The more interesting angle is that the survivors have to survive and make do between trials. Maybe they hunt for animals in the realm, maybe they scavenge for edible plants. If they need the toilet, they have the whole forest behind them. If we're talking during the trials are only around 10ish minutes usually, so I imagine they just hold it. Not something I thought I'd ever need to say, but hey. I think it's unlikely they do need to eat, but if they do, then I think it's probably going to be very much scavenging for different edible plants. Botany Knowledge, Claudette's perk, does mention how she scavenges plants around the campfire to be used for healing, so maybe a similar deal for food and such. What do killers and survivors do when not in a trial? A question somewhat linked to this that I discussed recently was why the survivors don't just leave the campfire. By simply looking at the home screen of the game, where the survivors sit around the campfire and the killer looks on, it would seem that they are unable to get to the survivors, and the campfire likely has some magical or protective properties that disallows anyone wishing to bring the survivors harm to enter the area. I do believe the devs mentioned at some point that the killers hang about in the different realms, and likely can go between them. The campfire area is probably like a central hub, as it were, that is accessible by all the characters. I think on the survivor end, they mostly just sit around the campfire and talk, or just relax together. We know characters like Kate are known to sing for everyone and such, so I imagine they all share their stories and different talents and stuff. There is also mention, of course, of them going into the realm and discovering things like Vigo's laboratory. I think the survivors do make attempts to escape between trials, going into the woods and seeking things out, likely in groups, or maybe even solo to give them a better shot. Ultimately, the harsh truth, I imagine, is that it's better to just stay by the fire where it's safe. How does the licenses work if they leave in the context of the entity's realm? Like when we lost the Stranger Things license, do they just vanish from the realm, except for that place that the entity puts survivors or killers that it no longer needs? So what they're referring to here is the void at the very end. This is a very interesting one, and I think it really comes down to how much you want to remove yourself from reality and apply lore to this situation, because this is of course referring to Stranger Things. Stranger Things is a weird one. Some theories I like to somewhat explain away their removal are either that the Mind Flayer had some kind of deal with the entity, and upon that deal ending, the characters return to their own timeline and back to Hawkins. I think that's fairly possible. The other option is all of these characters were drained of their potential energy, and the entity no longer had a use for them, and so they were tossed to the void, where all the previous characters of the realm that no longer feed the entity in any form will go. They're emotionless husks thrown to the void, but I mean, I don't see that happening really, particularly with characters like Steve and Nancy. They don't seem like the type to give up so easily, so I'm more on board with the Mind Flayer trade theory. The husk option may be more possible though, seeing as the survivors aren't available to buy, but are available in things like custom games with bots. Bots could very easily be the final remnants of them, used to aid these custom trials. That would be pretty messed up, but hey, it's the entity's realm. Alright, well, I do hope you enjoyed. Please let me know what you think of these, and any answers you have to these questions too, down below. Thanks, and goodbye.